everybody, and welcome to another brand new episode of It's My House podcast. I am, of course, as always, your host, Chris Dees, and my guest today, well, he's living proof that any man with two hands has a fighting chance. He has multiple victories over the great AJ Styles, and just so happened to be a part of one of the most controversial and talked about moments in the last 5-10 years in WWE history. He is, of course, the one and only Mr. James Ellsworth. James, thank you for joining me, man. How's it going?
Good, man. Thanks for that awesome introduction.
Oh, you're welcome, man. I take pride in my intros. How's things over in America? Obviously, like, things are getting back to normal now. What's the last sort of year and a half been like for you?
Yeah, so everything's getting back to normal. I think pretty much pandemic's being pushed aside now. Everyone's getting vaccinated and taking their masks off and getting back to doing what they like to do. The last year and a half, I tried to stay as normal as possible. I still wrestled as much as I could. I still, went out in public as much as I could. I was cautious, but you only live once, man. And I didn't want to get away from the normalcy too much.
Yeah, 100%. And over here in the UK, we've got literally 1 week now, the 19th, a week today, is when everything's over. All the restrictions are off. Everything's back to normal. No masks. All the shops are open again. It's so close. It's just over the horizon, man. It's so close. I'm so excited. Right, let's get into it, man. One of the first things I wanted to speak to you about was obviously the way you first came into WWE, which is obviously how most people know you from. I know obviously you're a big name on the indies, but most people are familiar with you from your time in WWE. What was it like for you to so quickly come from? Obviously, you were thrust into the ring. We'd never seen you before, just to be completely killed by Braun Strowman as part of that whole thing that he was doing for a little while. But obviously, the fans really got behind you. You were trending on Twitter. You were the talk of the internet wrestling community. And then all of a sudden, people were pining for you to come back. What was that like for you to go so quickly from relatively unknown to all of a sudden, everybody wants James Ellsworth?
Well, it's crazy, man. Up until that point, I wrestled 14 years on the indies, but I was never a real big name on the indies. I wasn't handed like a lot of opportunities, just because I don't look like your everyday wrestler. So I always knew I could be entertaining, and I always knew I could, whatever audience you put me in front of, I can make that audience react. But yeah, once I did the Strowman match, it's funny, you bring up like the internet wrestling community and the memes and all the support, which I appreciated. That's not what did it. It's that day when I wrestled Strowman, after I was done the match, Vince McMahon was looking for me. And when he found me, he shook my hand and he said, "Great job out there. I'm going to hire you."
Oh, wow.
And I said, I thought he was kidding. I was like, "Oh, thank you." He goes, "No, I'll be in touch." And he thought for a while, what am I going to do with this guy? He just thought I cut a good promo. He thought I sold well. He thought I looked different, and he thought I had something. And, 6 weeks later, he hired me. And so it was just unbelievable, man. Like the internet, we, like, a lot of people are in the internet bubble. Like the majority of wrestling fans aren't on the internet. Like your casual fans, your moms, dads, and kids, like, they're not on the internet. They come to the show, they enjoy it. They don't get in anybody's business, and they just want to be entertained and have fun. There is a large internet wrestling community. It's a loud minority of actual fan. Yeah. But yeah, it was Vince McMahon, man. He just saw something in me, and I was very blessed and fortunate that he did, and it worked out for all of us. I mean, he hired me. My T-shirt was the #1 seller for a month, and I feel like whatever they put me in worked. Like I felt like it, but yeah, man, I always tell everybody I had such a great time, and I appreciated the opportunity that he gave me.
Yeah, man, absolutely. What were those conversations with Vince like? Did he make it clear that he wanted you to be like a comedy character straight away, or?
So they were like, anytime I got to talk to him, it was all business. This is what we're doing. And this is what we want you to do. Like, obviously the average guy there is what, 6'1", 6'2", 220, the average guy. Yeah. I'm 5'8", 165, so, and I didn't go through NXT and the Performance Center, and they have time and money invested in people who did go through the Performance Center or NXT. So obviously they got to try to get their money's worth out of those people that went through that. So I was like, right away, he told me all like stuff like that, like, hey, you know, we're going to get whatever we can out of you right now. And then, you know, every now and then we'll bring you back and we'll do stuff. And like right away, he told me that. I'm like, man, I really want to stay here forever because I was enjoying myself, but I understood it, like the business part. And yeah, anytime I got to talk to him, he was very professional, very fun. Like I always got a kick out of him because growing up, I've been watching this man on my TV since 1988. You know, like I'm like, this guy's right in front of me. He's my boss now, and he's talking to me, and this is just so cool. That's how I felt about it. You know?
What obviously a lot of the quips and the promos and your interactions with other wrestlers, a lot of it was based around the way that you looked. And obviously you mentioned that just a minute ago that you don't look like your typical wrestler, or at least the wrestlers that we see in WWE anyway. But were you okay with that? Was that, did you ever feel like they were taking advantage of you, or were you quite happy to be a part of that sort of like, because WWE has moved away from bullying and mockery sort of storylines over the years, hasn't it? So then when it came back to that with you, I was a little bit surprised that they'd gone back to that during this, you know, PG era and trying to get kids involved. Were you comfortable with it?
Oh, absolutely, man. I have thick skin. I don't get offended by anything. Like I just, you know, people always get the wrong mindset of when things, I think, and people are like these days are they pretend to be offended easy and they pretend to have their feelings hurt. And I do say pretend because that's the majority. That's how it is. But man, no, this is all supposed to be fun. This is wrestling. This is supposed to be a good time. I don't care who says what. If especially like JBL on commentary will be saying like the most harsh things about me, but I knew that was helping me get sympathy and people feel bad for me. So I loved it. I would help, like before the show, I would give JBL lines to say about me, and he would just laugh, like, you know, and he would say the line. So, like, I didn't mind it all, man. Like I said, I have thick skin. I mean, if you get into wrestling, you should. Yeah, times are changing, but yeah, it's all in fun to be, man. This is all supposed to be a good time. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, you got to learn to laugh at yourself. I mean, yeah, it's important. Just in life in general, you got to be able to take a joke and not take things seriously.
Yeah,
You know,
the sticks and stones break my bones, but words may never hurt me. Line, I live by that. So
bumps and choke slams and suplexes can break your bones, but yeah.
Oh, they all hurt. That all hurts. So
what was like the reception with guys that you know on the indies? Like to see you all of a sudden pop up in WWE and then boom, like you said, 6 weeks later, you've got a contract without having really done any, or I guess without really having showcased any real wrestling, was there? Like guys obviously bust their asses on the independent scene. I know you did that for 14 years, but then on TV we didn't really see much wrestling from you, did we? So was there ever any jealousy amongst other indie guys that are desperate to get to WWE?
well, you know, I hate the word jealousy, but it is a real thing, and I don't like it because I believe we're all human. At the end of the day, we're all gonna we all have the same ending, not in the same way, but it ends the same for all of us. So, in my humble opinion, no one should be jealous of anyone, but I did feel a lot of jealousy, and I always didn't understand it. But the people that knew me and knew me for a long time, I'm very happy for me. The ones that know me personally, been around me a lot, I got a lot of love from the people who actually knew me. But yeah, like from other people, they don't and I think it's people that really don't understand how the business works. Like I was something that Vince saw something in and was getting over with the audience. So they had to take advantage of it. They had to make money off of it because it was a hot commodity at the time. That's just a business decision. And, you know, Vince, anytime, like they gave me, you know, I was on TV 2016, 17, and 18. So for those 3 years, I was on WWE television. They gave me a lot of promos on television. They gave me a lot of backstages because, man, like that part of wrestling to me is fun and easy. And, you know, like I don't get stressed about it. I don't, you know, think much about it. I'm just like, okay, well, this is what I kind of feel like I'm a bad guy right now. I'm a heel. I'll say something real annoying that the audience will get upset at. If I'm a baby face, I'll, you know, sell and act like I'm really giving this a try and put my heart into it. Like, so when you understand wrestling, you understand that's what it is. It's storytelling and it's selling the story that you're being presented. that's how you get over, and that's how people will always remember you. Wrestling is great. I love to actually wrestle and lock up and, do chain wrestling. And, I enjoy that stuff and I enjoy doing it, but that's not what sells tickets. It's I'm sorry about that. It's the, it's the storytelling, and it's the characterization. It's the facial expressions. It's all that theatrics that sell the story. And that's why I did as good as I did. It had nothing to do with if I could do a lion salt, so.
Yeah, man. I had Al Snow join me recently, and he said something similar, because obviously now he's a trainer, and one of the first things that he trains his students on is, don't come in wanting to be the best wrestler. Wrestling's great, but wrestling's only going to get you so far. And like you just said, if you can't entertain, if you can't get over, some of the best wrestlers in the business now aren't the best wrestlers. There's obviously safe pairs of hands like Randy Orton, but Randy Orton, to me, I've never seen Randy Orton as the best technical wrestler in the world. But he's up right at the top of my list as one of the best wrestlers in the world, because he makes me want to watch. And I think that was the same for you. Were you ever annoyed at how little you got to wrestle?
I enjoyed wrestling, but no, like, I was very appreciative that I was on TV a lot, because there's guys like that were there. Like I said, I was there 2016, 17, 18. So for those 3 years, and I was on TV almost every week, especially in 2017. I was on TV a lot, and there's been guys that have been there for 10 years that didn't get as much TV time as I did in 3. You know what I mean? So like, yeah. I appreciated just being on screen and getting to tell stories. Like, if my character personally wrestled more than it did, it wouldn't be as special. When I did get to wrestle, it was special because it didn't happen all the time. It's like, oh my God, Ellsworth wrestling John Cena, and tonight it was me and Carmella against John Cena and Nikki Bella. I hadn't wrestled in like 9 months, and then they gave me that match or whatever it was. It was probably like 5 or 6 months I hadn't wrestled, and they gave me that match, and they're like, holy crap, John Cena's gonna wrestle James Ellsworth, and they looked forward to it. If I was wrestling every week and just getting beat up every week, get beat every week, it doesn't mean anything. So then when I wrestled Cena, it was like April 2017. I didn't wrestle again on TV. I don't think until like November of 2017 when I wrestled Becky, and like the crowd, if you go back and watch that match, it was over there in the UK. Yep. Every chant was directed toward me. And Becky Lynch is a huge star. I'm in there with Becky Lynch, and she's great. I love her, and she's the best. She really is. But if you watch that match, every chant, Becky's going to kill you, that's directed towards me. Where's your chin? Ellsworth sucks. Like, everything was directed to, because they were excited that I was wrestling. I hadn't wrestled in a while on TV. Like, and then when I came back and I wrestled Asuka a few times, like, people were interested, So if I was just wrestling every week and get beat up every week, it would not have been as special, and people wouldn't have remembered half of what I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Less is more. Like you say, less is more, man. That's a really good way of looking at it. Because I think, as you say, guys that are on TV every week, it just sort of blends into one. You don't really remember those moments. But everything you've just mentioned there, as you were mentioning, I was like, oh yeah, he faced Asuka twice. Oh yeah, he faced Becky Lynch, and they were all great moments. And obviously that's a lot of big names for you to come in, and all of a sudden you started with Strowman. There's been Becky, there's been Cena, there's been AJ Styles, Dean Ambrose. What was it like when these things were pitched to you? Because like you hold, is it 3 or 4 victories over AJ?
I 3 times in a row. They had.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
And people remember that, man. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, I remember I got to the arena the first time I was wrestling. I thought I was wrestling The Miz, because a couple of weeks prior on SmackDown, The Miz had attacked me at the entranceway when I was supposed to team with AJ against John Cena and Dean Ambrose. The Miz attacked me, beat me up, and took my spot. So that day, they were like, yeah, we're going to bring you back and wrestle The Miz. And then I was like, okay. So I come back a couple of weeks later, and I'm like watching all these Miz matches on YouTube, just getting myself ready for it. And I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be easy. The Miz is easy to wrestle. Like, he's I'm I mean, there's nothing to it. Like, he's just a character, and he does this easy stuff in the ring. So they get there and like, yeah, it's you versus AJ, and it was Adam Pearce who first told me. He's like, what if I told you you were pinning the world champion tonight? And I laughed. I was like, I wouldn't believe you. He goes, I wouldn't lie to you. And he walked away. I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. I didn't know Adam too well at the time, but I just thought he was kidding. So then I sit down and I'm eating at catering, and AJ Styles sits down next to me, and he's like, ha ha, you and I tonight, kid. And I was like, and I said to AJ, I was like, yeah, okay, I wish. He goes, no, really, it's you and I. And I was like, what's going on here? And then Arn Anderson walked up to me. He's like, hey, I'm the agent for your match. It's you and AJ. He goes, Ambrose is going to be the referee. And I go, oh, Ambrose is the referee, so I am winning. Right there, I knew I was like, they're going to have Ambrose do something, and he's going to put Ellsworth's arm over AJ, and I'm going to win. I'm like, that's crazy. I thought to myself, that's crazy. So they did it, and then afterward, they didn't tell me this. I'm on Talking Smack live with Daniel Bryan and Renee Young, and they go, next week, James Ellsworth's going to get a WWE title match. I'm like, wait, what? Like, right there, I'm like, are you like? And yeah, then they did the whole DQ thing with AJ and I in the title match, which that match is so fun to watch. If you haven't seen it, it's so entertaining. And then my personal favorite I had against them was the ladder match for my contract. And that was a lot of fun being in that. I wish I got to wrestle him more, because I was just so comfortable with him more. I was nervous the first time I wrestled. I'm so nervous because I have so much respect for his ability and so much respect for him overall. Like, he's just a great guy and one of the best wrestlers in the world. But more and more I got comfortable with him. I was like, man, I wish I could wrestle now, because I'm so comfortable with just being around him and being there. But what we did, it's been 5 years, and people still come up to me. Today I was in Walmart. People are like, hey man, I remember when you beat AJ. And I'm like, that's 5 years ago, and people remember that. People are still talking. That's half a decade ago now, and people are still talking about it. So cool.
Crazy. Would you go back? Have there been any talks? I mean, it sounds like you'd go back. It sounds like you loved it there, but have there been any talks at all for you to go back since 2018? I know obviously COVID scuppered everything. Is there anything that you want to go back and do in WWE, or are you happy getting back onto the indies now that things are back to normal?
I enjoy the indies. I'm hoping, like, with the WWE stuff, obviously, I would go back at any point, because I enjoyed it so much. But I'm thinking, I'm a realist. So you know how, like, sometimes the Boogeyman comes back, or sometimes Hornswoggle comes back.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe, I'm just guessing, maybe that's their mindset with me. Like, oh, every now and then we'll bring them back to be in the Royal Rumble. We'll bring them back to try to help Carmella, and he accidentally screws her over. Or we'll bring them back to, maybe AJ calls out his toughest opponent, James Ellsworth walks out. Or maybe he, out of nowhere, I pop up and win a 24/7 title for a day, and R-Truth beats me back. Like, there's so much you could do with it. But that's where my mind is. Hopefully they're thinking the same thing, at least.
Yeah, it'd be stupid not to, man. Because honestly, some of your stuff over those 3 years was some of the most entertaining content that WWE put out. It really was, and especially you mentioned Carmella in there. I've got to ask you about that whole going up, pulling down the briefcase on her behalf. How controversial that was, because obviously we were really in the middle of giving women a chance and pushing them towards the main event, and then obviously to see a man go up there who wasn't even really like a full-time wrestler on the roster to go up and take that away from her was a huge deal, a huge talking point. Obviously, they then went and corrected that mistake that they made within was like a week later or 2 weeks later, I think it was. Did you ever get any backlash from that, whether it was from fans or from anybody within the industry? What was it like for you being a part of something that was like literally talked about everywhere by everybody?
Man, so it worked. And what I mean by it worked is people, and maybe yourself included, think that they did that second Money in the Bank ladder match 2 weeks later on SmackDown because they got so much backlash, which is not true at all. They knew they were going to do the second one before we ever did the first one.
Oh, okay.
It was Vince's idea. Vince goes, we got to get some heat on Carmella and Ellsworth, because at the house shows, we were getting cheered. Me and Carmella, when we were like before the Money in the Bank, we were coming out at the house shows, and people just remember me being goofy with AJ, and Carmella's a beautiful woman and she's entertaining. So we're getting cheered. So he's like, we need to get some heat on them. I want Carmella to start getting pushed. He's like, so the way we get the heat, Ellsworth climbs the ladder. He gives her the briefcase, and then we'll get a lot of backlash for it. But then we'll pop a rating on SmackDown because we'll have another one where she kind of grabs it herself. But this will be like their big moment. And he was right, man. He was right about it all. So that was the most talked about moment from that pay-per-view. And then the SmackDown that we did a week or two later and did the second one, 600,000 people more watched that SmackDown than the week before. 600,000 people. It popped the rating. And he's a genius. Whenever he feels like being a genius, he's a genius. Like, it worked. I loved it, man. Like, I loved all the backlash. I loved all, because like I said, I have thick skin. I just laughed at it all. I'm like, you guys are getting worked here. You're falling right into our plan. Like, and it's all good. I that'll be remembered forever. And every year when there's a Money in the Bank, they're gonna be like, yo, remember the first one, the first women's one. Do you remember what happened? Every 20 years from now, but man, I remember, when I was 15 and I was watching the first ever women's Money in the Bank, and they had to do James Ellsworth climbing the crowd. That 20 years from now, a 35-year-old man's gonna be saying that, So I loved it. Man, like, I hope at some point they give me a opportunity to come back and try it again, and maybe something will happen to me, when I try it again. But it was cool, man. That's what's missing in wrestling. That's controversy creates cash is an Eric Bischoff book, and it's so true. You have to be controversial to get people's attention, full on attention, and that's what we did there. And they don't do stuff like that a lot anymore, and I wish they would, because it works.
And yet people say that Vince doesn't know what he's doing. Things like that just go to prove that he does. I know obviously things haven't been as good in WWE recently. Like, obviously, as a big wrestling fan, I see that you tweet things about what's going on in wrestling all the time. So you're obviously you keep up with the industry and the business. But what do you think? I know you just said that the controversial moments are missing a bit more these days, but what do you think? What do you think's missing from WWE in general that has made ratings drop so much? Because obviously, even just in the time since you were last around in 2018, ratings have dropped substantially. I know SmackDown not as much. NXT's pretty much just ticking along, but Raw is obviously at literally its all-time low. What do you think, as a fan, as somebody just watching? If you step away from being a wrestler, what do you want to see WWE do differently?
It's always been, in my opinion, a star-driven business. And what I mean by that is they don't have those A stars right now, other than Roman Reigns and Randy Orton. Like, those are like your people know them. But like AJ, I love Daniel Bryan, I love all that. Those are wrestlers that people know, but like not outside of wrestling. Yeah. Like, anytime somebody recognized me, oh, he was a wrestler in WWE, and they'd be like, oh, who'd you wrestle? I don't say AJ Styles, because that person ain't going to know them because they don't watch wrestling. I say John Cena. I'm like, oh, I wrestled John Cena before. Yeah. And their eyes light up, and they're like, you wrestled John Cena? Because they know him. That's what it's missing, man, is the star power. Like, every week when AEW was beating NXT in the ratings, everybody's like, how could this happen? What is that? What? I'm like, you really don't get it. Like, NXT it's like their AAA. Like AAA baseball, it's their farm system. There's no stars there. Like, you turn on AEW, there's Chris Jericho, there's Matt Hardy, there's Sting, there's Jon Moxley, there's even like Rusev's a bigger star than everyone on NXT. So, like, I'm like, it shocked me that there was times that NXT won the ratings. I'm like, really? Like, NXT is a great show, but it's not. There's no stars. You have to create stars. And I don't know if they want to anymore. I know there's that mystique of they don't want to anymore, or they're just like, the fans not being there for the last 15 months has hurt a lot too. That you can't, dude. I'm so tired of looking at the Thunderdome. I think we have to look at it one more time tonight.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
sick and tired of looking. Good. Hats off to them for trying that. You know what I mean? Like, that's great. It was a great idea at the time for the pandemic. God, it got old quick. But now your stars, your storytelling, And you got to let guys, if guys are getting over organically, you got to just let it happen. Like I remember being there in Rusev. I brought him up. The Rusev Day thing got over him, and everyone was buying Rusev Day T-shirts, and people were every house show I was going to, and he was on. People were just going nuts for him. Then I just saw him take Aiden English away from him, take Lionel away from him, turned him heel. I'm like, this guy was over. Like, what are you doing? Like, like Otis recently.
Yeah.
A year ago, Otis was red hot. I mean, every time you watch him, it was entertaining. It was fun. They put Mandy Rose with them in a little country girl outfit. People loved that. Next thing you know, Mandy Rose is away from him. They cut his hair. They turn him heel. And now, I don't enjoy watching Otis anymore.
No.
Nothing against Otis, but they took everything that was right with him and they took it all away. So that's in my humble opinion, that's what's wrong. There's no stars, and a lot of it is because if people are getting over, it's like a lot of times I don't know why, but a lot of times it's taken away. But like Roman Reigns, for instance, he's a star. When he wasn't on SmackDown, the ratings were down, and then when he came back, they went up like 200,000-300,000 people. You can get all these numbers are there for people to see because he's a star, and he's not even like a John Cena star, but he's the biggest star they have in WWE right now is him.
Yep, by far.
Yeah. And then they lost Becky Lynch. I mean, not lost her. She got, she had her child. And then, she's big. She got over. She was a big star. Then Brock left. Brock's a huge star. It's a star-driven business. You have to have stars on the show. If you didn't need that, AEW wouldn't have went out and got Sting or Jericho or Matt Hardy or, you know what I mean? You need that. And it's hard right now. Everyone's like, the ratings aren't great across the board. They're not good. And hopefully it gets better. Hopefully fans be in their help, and hopefully they will create new stars. And I remember like 93, 94, 95, WWE was in a rut. Hogan had left. And all of a sudden, The Undertaker got, like 96. The Undertaker, Stone Cold, Triple H, The Rock, they all stepped up. And all of a sudden, you had all these brand new stars, and it was fun to watch. And hopefully, that's what happens again.
Yeah, man. Do you think there's any truth to the rumors that Vince doesn't want to build stars at the moment because they're getting ready to maybe sell the company within the next sort of 5 or so years? I think it makes sense because you don't want another John Cena, somebody that's going to be bigger than the company. Obviously, they want to make the company look worth buying, worth investing in without it costing, it's going to cost many, many billions of dollars. But if you've got a Cena, a Strowman, a Roman, guys like that, The Rock Lesnar, is going to just double and triple that, isn't it? So do you think there's any truth to that as being why they're not trying to build people?
Well, I'll answer that in 2 different sections. Number one, do I think Vince McMahon will sell the company as long as he's alive? No. Just personal opinion. No. Number 2, I mean, there's something to like they just got rid of Braun Strowman, which I couldn't believe. Couldn't believe. But maybe he was making so much money and they're trying to cut some money to make the company look like it's worth more to investors. I don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't want big stars. Like, I get it. You don't want, maybe there is some truth to that. You don't want guys to be like John Cena who can go to do movies or whatever they want to do. But it's crazy, man. Like, that's why the ratings are down, but they're not losing any money. That's the thing. They might not care about the ratings. There's my thoughts on it. I don't think they care. They're the best TV deals they've ever gotten. There's YouTube. They're making money off of. They're making money in other ways. They don't really need the ratings. But it's crazy. Like, I said this to a lot of people. I went to the beach last week, Ocean City, Maryland, here where I live. And I've been going there my whole life. And I remember seeing people on the boardwalk just with wrestling shirts on all the time. And all the T-shirt shops would sell wrestling shirts. I went there last week. I didn't see anyone wearing wrestling shirts, and I didn't see anyone selling wrestling shirts at the T-shirt shop. And I'm like, wow, we are at an all-time low. No one outside our bubble cares, or they would be selling shirts, and then people would be wearing shirts. And it was sad, man. I hope it gets better. I really do.
Yeah, that's not really. They want kids to watch, but they're not really doing anything to bring those kids in by. You haven't got Happy Hoggy Bailey anymore. You haven't got John Cena around all the time. There's nothing really there's a lot of darker and grittier things going on at the moment that don't really appeal to kids, you know.
Right.
And
I thought Otis was great. I thought Otis was
yeah,
Matt Riddle's pretty entertaining right now. He's, to a kid, he might, they probably think he's hilarious because he is, like, talking about AJ Styles hopping around like a bunny rabbit and all that. Like, and, I will give WWE that right now. They seem to be going with Riddle, like putting them in spots to succeed. So that's good to see. I think, like, Shotzi Blackheart, I have high hopes for Shotzi Blackheart. Comes out in a tank. How many of those toy tanks could they sell to kids? You know what I mean? Like little helmets and all that. She looks different. She's good in the ring. She has all those gimmicks, like I said, the tank and the hat and all that. She's different color hair, and I think she could be like a Becky Lynch or a Sasha Banks or a Bayley, that caliber of performer. So, and then I love Karrion Kross and Scarlett. Hopefully they keep them together and put them on the main roster. There's potential there throughout. And hopefully it's just up to them, man. It's up to how they portray these people on television.
Yeah, man. And if Vince McMahon somehow sees this episode and he hasn't already thought of this, Matt Riddle, win Money in the Bank, grow in the bank. It writes itself. Grow in the bank. You could sell replica briefcases that say "Grow in the Bank," like you say. That appeals to kids. Kids love props. Kids love toys. There's so many ways that you can get kids back involved again. And like you say, Shotzi's a really good example. She's got a different look, the bright green hair. When I first got into wrestling in like the mid-90s, mid to late 90s, it was Matt and Jeff Hardy that really sucked me in because they looked different. I'd not seen anything like that before. I'd not seen anybody jumping off of fucking 30-foot ladders to hurt each other before. It's that stuff that they can really, they need to just hone in on it a bit more, focusing on what brought people in before. Right, I want to move away from WWE just a little bit. I know that you're obviously very synonymous with WWE, but you also spent some time with NWA quite recently, didn't you? What was it like working with Billy Corgan? I know that you and me have got quite similar music tastes. I've seen you talk about it in interviews before. So being such a big fan of rock music, what was it like working with Billy Corgan? What's he like opposed to Vince McMahon?
So yeah, I didn't really get to know him that well. I met him. I got a picture with him. I was around him maybe twice, and I didn't really get a good. And I feel people out pretty well, but I didn't get it. Like I didn't really get a good sense of personality from him. So I don't know. Like it was just business, and a lot of people, that's the way you got to treat it. It was cool for me personally because I loved Smashing Pumpkins growing up. So I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. This guy owns his place, and hopefully he does good things with it. I had a blast working with all of this. I think all of this is amazing. It's a shame that he hasn't had a WWE run and might not ever have one, because he looks more like a WWE superstar than anyone out there, and he talks great, and he looks amazing in the suit, and he just looks like a world champion. So Billy Corgan's been very smart having him as his top guy. But I had a good time. A couple of times I did work there. And hopefully, going forward, the NWA grows. Thunder Roses, I know she's there. She's a friend of mine. She's awesome. I mean, I always knew she was going to get over. There'd be times, man, I'd be on the indies like 3 or 4 years ago after WWE, and I'd see like Shotzi Blackheart or Thunder Rosa or Isaiah Scott or like Karrion Kross. And I'm like, man, Matt Riddle's the number one. I wrestled Matt Riddle WrestleMania week in 2018, and I was like, and I would see these people, I'd go, these people need to be signed, and they're all signed now. Everyone that I thought that should be signed, they're all. I'm like, maybe I got a good eye for talent. I don't know, but like
I've got you to thank, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I know, but I'm like, I remember wrestling Matt Riddle going, this guy needs to be on TV right now. Like I was like, this guy has everything. He looks different. He talks different. He acts different. He even wrestles different. Like, and it's all a good different. And I'm just happy for him. But yeah, man, I had a blast at NWA. Getting back to that question, it was cool for me as a fan of Billy Corgan to work for him a few times for sure.
Have you ever had any talks of like Ring of Honor or Impact or MLW, any of those kind of places? Have you ever got any desires to work for one of those guys?
Well, Impact I did a few times. I did a couple of house shows with them, and I did their Bound for Glory pay-per-view against Eli Drake, who's now LA Knight in NXT. Yeah. And I've really had a good time working for that band. Locker Room was cool, it was chill, it was fun. But dude, like my character, the Ellsworth character, it's a WWE character, it's a WWE guy, and I get that, I understand that. It's like I said, it's like a boogeyman or a hornswoggle. Where hornswoggle, he might pop up like an Impact every now and then, and like me or whatever. But we're WWE characters, and it's hard to get away from that when you're most of your work is character work. You know, like TJ Perkins is a wrestler, great wrestler. He gets to wrestle at MLW. He gets to wrestle at Impact because he's a great wrestler. I'm a character. Yeah, if I pop up, it's funny once or whatever, but yeah, and those companies are more wrestling driven than character driven. You know.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Obviously going back to WWE, you mentioned it again there, how your character fits WWE the most. I know you were there for 3 years. Not a particularly long time to be with a company, but obviously you weren't, like you said before, you weren't consistently wrestling every single week, every single day. I know you did house shows as well, but stuff like that. But if you can sum up that time that you were there, what would be your absolute top highlight of all your time in WWE? You wrestled some huge names, you were a part of some huge moments, some fantastic segments and interactions. You got to kiss Carmella backstage. You've done some pretty cool stuff. How would you sum it all up if your wrestling career was to end literally today or tomorrow? How would you look back at your career? Would you say it's been a success? Would you have wanted to have achieved more, or would you be quite happy with how it's gone?
I'm blessed on what I got to accomplish. I remember getting into wrestling, and I go, okay, the end game here, the biggest show you could be on is WrestleMania. So when I got into wrestling when I was 17, I said, that's my goal. I got to be on WrestleMania. Because they asked us our goals at wrestling school. And I was 17. I was like, and they're like, what's your goals? I was like, I want to be on WrestleMania. And they're like, man, you're thinking all the way, ain't you? I'm like, yeah. So I remember being at the curtain at WrestleMania. And Mickie James was there. Mickie James was my first match when I was 17. The first person I ever wrestled in a match in front of people when she was Alexis Lurie. And it's because no other wrestler was there to wrestle her, so they had me wrestle her. And so I remember being at the curtain and looking over, and I was like, man, things just are full circle. Mickie James was my first match, and she was involved in that match at WrestleMania. So I'm standing there in the curtain of what I considered the last resort, WrestleMania, the highest of highs. And I'm like, she's my first match, and she's involved in my match at WrestleMania. Like, wow. So that was my goal, was WrestleMania. I got to be a part of it. Becky Lynch gave me a big bump in the match in front of, 75,000 people. It was great. But do I want to accomplish more? Of course. Any performer, any entertainer, any person involved in any kind of, theatrics wants to do more, because it's in us to want to perform. I love performing on the indie level. And I say it I've said it a million times. I've performed in front of 7 people. I've performed in front of 75,000 people, and I've performed in front of, numerous amounts of people in between. And it doesn't matter how many people I'm in front of. I just love to do it. It's fun for me. I enjoy it. So I'm gonna be 37 this year. I could see myself wrestling for another 5-6 years, but I always want to be involved, man. In the future, I'd love to be like a Jim Cornette, a Jimmy Hart, a Bobby the Brain Heenan, like I was for Carmella, because it worked. It worked, man. That girl, I helped that girl. I helped her get over, and she's such a star now, and she's doing so good. And she's got a big women's title match coming up against Bianca Belair on SmackDown this week. And people love her, and people know her. And a lot of times people bring me up because I was with her, and she would have became a star without me. But once they put me with her, it was just after the Money in the Bank thing, it was so good. It was so different from everything else that was going on. And I really cherish my time with her, and I'm great. I'm very happy for her that she's still hitting home runs there. And Anything she does, it's been working. But yeah, man, I got to have a WWE title match when the main event of SmackDown. Like I did a lot of cool stuff. I got to be in the Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble is my favorite pay-per-view. I got to be a part of that. Obviously, in the future, I'd love to go back and do more, but I'm very blessed on what I've been able to do in my career for sure.
Yeah, man, like you say, in those 3 years, it sounds like you've accomplished more than some wrestlers do in a lifetime. You know, it's
Yeah.
incredible that it just literally came out of nowhere. You just made one quick appearance on TV. Braun Strowman completely destroyed you, and then boom, shortly after that, you get in WWE title matches. Man, it's the stuff dreams are made of. It's incredible. James, man, that's all I've got for you today, man. Thank you so much for joining me. Before I let you go though, where can viewers find you on like social media and YouTube and Pro Wrestling Tees and things like that?
You can find me on Twitter at Real Ellsworth. Find me on Instagram at James Ellsworth Wrestling, and find me on Cameo. Just go to cameo.com and search James Ellsworth. My videos are a lot of fun. I'm not like just hurrying up and getting it done. I'm having fun with my videos. I like roasting people. It's just a good time.
Yeah, man, brilliant. And guys, as usual, thank you for joining us. You know where to find me. It'll be down here along the bottom of the screen at PWCDs. It's all in the About section, all in the link tree in my Twitter bio. Guys, James, thank you so much. It's been an absolute blast. And until next time, everybody, thank you and take care.
Yeah, take care, man. God bless. Stay safe.